Hi, and welcome to the show. Again, we thank God for the opportunity to come into your homes and give you information about what's taking place. And remember, we're still in a recovery mode. We're still rebuilding. We're still restoring. But we're looking forward to what God will do 3 years after. We're just pleased and kind of disappointed that we couldn't do all of the ceremonies and memorials for Katrina, and that we had to evacuate and go out of state to the getaway from Hurricane Gusto. And the good news is that we're back, and we got information about people that may have had the problems that they had before Gusto, and how to deal with some of the problems. We're pleased to have on the show as our guest Darnetta, and she's going to talk a little bit about. We're going to ask some questions about a lot of people that have left, and maybe they left because it was the first of the month. They left, and they may had some bills due. And she's going to talk about some of the things that you can do if you didn't get that bill in, and how to prepare for it, and how to keep yourself in the clear. And we're pleased again to have you on the show, Darnetta, and you've been doing an outstanding job. We really want to make you regular because the information you've been given has been so helpful. If anybody's paying attention, I think they really should come to your classes as well, but they can work their way out of a financial situation that whether they're imposed on themselves or they inherited. I think they can get some helpful hints on how to, I think was the thing you call it, it's rediscovering finance. How do you phrase it? Because a lot of times people just talking about washing their credit or something like that.
Credit restoration.
Restoring.
To restore their credit.
Restore. And a lot of people don't go to that extent. They,
right.
In other words, they may go to what are the other agencies offer cleaning your credit or something like that.
Credit cleaning.
And it doesn't do a sufficient job. It doesn't
right.
suffice to taking care of all of those problems. And you say sometimes in less than a year, some of them same problems occur again, and you have to go through that same process. So talk a little bit about, if anything, the hurricane that really the Lord blessed that we didn't feel the full force of it, but we have been inundated with it. Talk about it from a perspective of individuals that had to leave, but they had financial problems before they had to leave, and so this have added a greater, I guess, financial responsibility because now they may be behind on some of their bills.
Well, the first thing people should do is to notify their creditors. And when I say notify the creditor, let's go back to Katrina. This was a great catastrophe. There were loss of employment, loss of residence, loss of automobiles, loss of personal identification. A whole lot of information was lost. So there were some things that were repossessed. Individuals were left with being forced to try to pay for items that were repossessed. They no longer have the item. The creditor repossessed the item, but then they're still trying to collect from individuals, for that item that they now have. So just to go back, let's go back to Katrina and then work our way to Gustav. Well, the first thing you should do, first opportunity you get when the mail is moving, is to send a certified notification to the creditor that you are a victim of natural disaster, that your area is under mandatory evacuation, and that you're in a state of emergency, and unfortunately you're unable to meet your obligation, but that you're not trying to not meet your obligation, but you're going to need them to work with you, and that this is a request that the creditor works with you. So it's not like you didn't make an attempt to contact that individual. So that's the first thing everyone should do.
Now you said written. What about if you just decide to call a number in a place, safe haven, that you may have, if anything, evacuated to, and you're in a location, maybe in the shelter, and so you're using your cell phone, and so the connection may not be so concrete that you can communicate well. Is that sufficient?
Well, I mean, a phone call is good, but there's nothing like having something in writing. And the reason why I say to use the U.S. mail as far as the certification process is because when that creditor received that mail, they have to sign for it. So it's not a thing of, oh, I sent it and they saying they didn't receive it, or you're not able to prove that you sent it. When you send it, you get a receipt from the government, the mail, letting them know that you sent it. When it's received, you're also notified by the government, the U.S. mail, when I say the government, that that mail was received, who received it, and when they signed for it. You have documentation of time of delivery and everything.
Now, I'm actually, probably a lot of people may not use that practice, but is it a good practice to make a copy of that letter and then as well as get it documented by the government, by the Postal Service? That way you have your copy and they have the forwarding copy. Is that a good procedure? And I'm,
Yes,
I'm asking that because a lot of times people may not have the opportunity, may have, if anything, may not have the opportunity to go to Kinko's, because if they're displaced to another city, another state, then they may not know the area where to do this, and so they say, well, can I wait till I get back home and follow these procedures?
Well, if you're in a situation where you had to suddenly leave and you left all of that information, well, that's going to be challenging. But right now is the preparatory. I mean, we know where we live. We know what we deal with year after year. The most important thing is to keep all of your correspondence with your creditors' information in one place, so that in event you have to evacuate, then you have phone numbers of your creditors, you have the address of your creditors, where you can immediately start your correspondence, maybe with a phone call and then with the follow-up of a letter. But if you're in a case where you've had to run off and just leave everything and you didn't know that it was going to be like Katrina, just took everybody by surprise, well, then you have to notify the creditors as you can gather that information.
Now, what Katrina taught us, if anything, for documents that were very, very important and that you really couldn't get them that readily, they suggested that you get a safe place to put all your valuable documents, and that way not only make extra copies, but store it in the way that if it gets destroyed, you have a backup. You know, not just on the hard drive or a computer or something like that, but you have a backup. And so my question deals with, again, asking that question. This hurricane was not as severe as Katrina in that we were not displaced as long as Katrina. And so even after, it took us at least months to get back in the city, and most of your documents have been sitting on the water. And look, they can restore those documents, but it's very costly.
Right.
I'm talking about the average citizen that has to deal with the cost of evacuating, which gas is very high. I think it's higher than it was at Katrina. Right. Then you have to find, if you don't want to stay in the shelter, you have to find a place that is reasonably income that can deal with the cost of you staying. And the other problem is, once you paid out all that money, you still got to come back home, pay your mortgage, pay your insurance, pay all of those other bills that you had before Gusto or Katrina, and you're still paying it. Now, but my question is dealing with the hardship. Basically, you mentioned about individuals that the process, some of the material may have been repossessed, but they still have to pay for it. Is there any way, or any you know, people feel bad enough that they're paying for something that they don't have anymore? Is there any redress for that situation?
Well, of course, the first thing you want to do is seek legal advice, so that you can speak with an attorney and have a mouthpiece, have someone to speak for you when it concerns a natural disaster, something of that nature, because people were out of work for some time. So of course that creditor want their items back. But the thing about it, if that creditor was able to sell that and, you know, it was in resellable condition and things of that nature, well, of course, you know, they're trying to get a double payment on that. They're trying to get you to pay for the same car that they're selling to someone else, and so they're going to have you pay them and someone else, I guess. But get with a lawyer so they can fully guide you through the process to protect yourself as a consumer and a citizen.
Now, I know that's not legal, because I know they can sell it, and if they sell it for less than the face value, then you're responsible for that portion that they you know. So in most cases, it should be, well, most cases they will sell it at auction, and whatever they get at auction, you're still responsible for that portion that they did not receive.
Right, the difference.
Right,
yes.
and so it's disalarming, because I know most people after they don't have that item, they don't pay for it. They say, I don't have it, why should I pay for it?
Right.
But it does something to their credit, is that right?
Yes, it does. It affects their credit. And when that happens, well, if your credit is affected, when there's a difference between your original creditor being on your credit and the credit collection agencies. When credit collection agencies report on your credit, they report because they weren't able to collect it from you. But the legal thing is you never signed an agreement with the credit collection agency. You signed an agreement with the original creditor. So this is something between you and the creditor. So when it comes down to the collection agency, that's like another party. And of course, there are laws on the book with the Federal Trade Commission and the Credit Reporting Act there to help the consumer get a better understanding of their rights.
Now, in most cases, most consumers, do they know that?
Most consumers don't know. A lot of people have a lot of inaccurate information in their credit, and it's due to the lack of their knowledge. But knowledge is power. So what happens is when the credit reporting agencies are notified that this is inaccurate information, they're given 30 days to get that information removed from that credit file. But most of the time when people are trying to do it themselves and get their credit clean, they really don't know which laws to actually, say, well, according to such and such a law, this information is not supposed to appear on my credit.
But they don't know that, so basically they don't know which one to cite. So in most cases, they're still in that same predicament
Yes.
of having a poor, slow, a bad credit. And so if anything, it's not a true indicator of credit worthy in individuals. And
Right.
again, we have to thank you for bringing that to our attention through your organization and helping people and give them those dates that you are available. That way, not just this show, but definitely they can go to other sites and be counseled, because a lot of times people just need some information to help them in their crisis. Because financially, I think we talked about it in previous shows that deal with people who are stressed so much that they will do some things that ultimately will result to the losing of their lives.
Right, yeah, there was some things shared regarding especially women, because it's a lot of pressure on women.
So you're saying men won't commit suicide?
I believe that men will.
Higher...
I believe that men can and will, but the information that was shared with us during the other shows were pertaining to wives and mothers. Mm-hmm. But of course, credit affects everyone. It affects your health.
Right.
It can cause a heart attack, stress, so many things. It can cause cancer. Stress is one of the #1 causes of most disease and illness. Mm-hmm. And so when you have all of these credit issues, income issues, these things affect, and I do believe that men are greatly affected because they're concerned whether or not their children will have food, clothing, and shelter. So a lot of times it can even bring a man to a state of depression.
I just was asking that question because we do see, I think, a higher rate of females, though, because I think they take that permanent role of being the great provider secondary after the male in the family, because I think women absorb so much that a lot of times the men say, well, I make the money, you spend the money, and that's my job. We're going to go to break, but we're going to come back and talk about some other issues that deal with the evacuation situation, because we know a lot of people had to evacuate for Hurricane Gusto, and they're incurring some costs. Economic, and one thing that they're incurring is from everyday activity to just eating basic meals. And so we're going to talk about that when we come back. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.